Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I don't even know where to begin my full thoughts. I completed the game this past weekend. I didn't 100% it, but I completed it with 51 hours underneath my belt. Man, when you think of a game that can pull you every which way emotionally, and when you're done with it, you just don't even know where to begin with your train of thought, that's a good game. The review scores, if you've seen how high they are from all the media outlets, this is one of the best games I've played in my life. Now, when you think of the original Final Fantasy VII and you think of where the timeline that Rebirth is taking place, which is when they get to Junon all the way to the Forgotten Capital, it's that segment of the game. You think of some of the iconic scenes. I know the game came out in 97. We know that certain characters may or may not die. I'm going to try to be as spoiler free as I possibly can be, because if I go full spoiler, we're going to be here all day. I'll probably will make a video giving my thoughts on the ending of the game and my theory of what's next. But for right now, fair warning, this is spoiler free. I don't want to give away too much. Hopefully the footage that I'm showing doesn't show too much away plots, but it is going to be game footage that's from all different hours of the game. If you've been watching my streams on Rumble, I've streamed nearly all this game on Rumble. This was my most anticipated game, and I am just speechless. Let's get everything, the basics, right off the bat. If you played Final Fantasy VII Remake, the gameplay, as far as the combat goes, is almost exactly the same. There's a couple of, I guess, additions with the synergy abilities and certain differences with certain, I guess, double team maneuvers and defensive stuff, and yeah, and item crafting and things like that. There's an item transmuter. The skill tree is a little bit more different as well. You go to your, I guess, your weapon upgrades, and you have like folios, and you earn like SPs. It's a little bit different, but for the most part, if you play Remake, you're gonna be in here like a duck in water. It's pretty much the same combat mechanics. You get ATB points down below that allow you to use certain attacks, spells, items, or your synergy abilities and summons and all that good stuff. So you combat in real time. You can set classic, where your characters kind of do like an auto attack as far as like the basic abilities go, but you still have to push X to enter the menu and choose whether you want your abilities or your spells or what you want. There's also a shortcut for your abilities and different things that you can set as far as combat goes. I know that this new style of combat that they did for the remakes, not everybody likes. I got used to it. I prefer this now. Sometimes the old school turn-based, where your characters are just on one side of the screen and the enemies are there and you take turns, it's a little too slow for me. I like the fast, action-packed combat that this game has. So yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has basically overall the same gameplay mechanics as Remake, but the one shining thing here is that it's expanding more. It's covering a good portion of the rest of the world that Midgar inhabited on. So you get to see different cities like under Junon. You get to see Junon. You get to see Cosmo Canyon. You get to see Costa del Sol. There's a few different cities that you go through around here, and you get to see a variety of different characters. There's a lot of cameos and reappearances from a remake with certain characters. Side characters make a lot of funny different cameos and appearances, but you also have what are called like intel quests. So Chadley's a big part of this game. Chadley has his virtual combat system from the OG remake game, but also you get intel for him, which comes in the form of Moogle intel, Chocobo intel, Expedition intel, Fiend intel, certain stuff. It's almost like when you enter the open world, it comes a little bit like Breath of the Wild, where there's certain, I guess, database info that you provide to Chadley so that the world gives you a little bit more information. You get access to certain things that Chadley could bring to you. There's towers that open up and show additional stuff, and this is where all the side quests come in here. I didn't do too many of the side quests. There are bulletin boards in each of the areas that give you access to more important side quests that can help your affinity with your teammates. Yeah, there's a affinity relationship mechanic that this game has, and I'm not getting into spoilers, but it can affect certain outcomes and certain quests later on in the game to how close you are to certain individuals in your party. So if you're a completionist and you want to get 100% on this, you are going to have quite a bit. I didn't get 100% on here, and I still clocked in 51 hours, and that's with doing a few of these missions that are on the side and the main campaign. Now, as far as leveling up and stuff like this, your characters can level up to level 70, which is 20 more than what was on Remake. So there's quite a bit here. It justifies the open world aspect. I will say this, though, the open world is not as big as I had hoped. Yeah, it's huge, but you're kind of like contained to one area depending where you're at as far as a chapter goes. So let's say you're in chapter 8, you're kind of locked in as far as fast travel goes. You're not able to go to previous regions that you're able to go. So it's not a true open world where you have the entire world map to explore and look at. I'm hoping in the third installment they just open it up completely where you can go back and forth freely. But in this one, depending on what chapter you're in, you're confined to a certain area. Fast travel won't be available for a good chunk of whatever story you're in. So it kind of still has a little bit of a linear aspect, especially once you get into the middle of a quest line. Like, let's say you get to a certain area, you have to accomplish the goal before it opens back up. So, yeah, it does have open world aspects, but not to the extent of I had hoped. So that's one downside to it. Now, as far as the story goes, if you played the OG, this segment of the game, for the most part, is actually pretty much the same. If you've played the OG 97 Final Fantasy 7, this whole area is pretty much the same. There's not too much as far as changes go. Yeah, here or there, there's certain characters that you meet different ways, certain cities and areas of the game that you accessed earlier now than when you previously would in the OG, which is fine because for the most part, it still flows pretty good, and they did a good amount of giving certain characters justice in this. There's actually at least 2 or 3 characters from the OG game that they gave a better backstory on, and that's what I like about this episodic format that we're able to, because in the first one and Remake, we got pretty good decent amount of backstory for the Avalanche members with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. And in this one now, we got Red XIII getting a little bit more of a backstory. We also got Sid and Vincent and other characters getting pretty good amount of backstory being told here as far as Aerith goes as well. We see a lot of Sephiroth. I'm not going into details about this, but if you remember in the OG, he wasn't really around as much. They kind of did like the Jaws mystery type of thing. So Remake and Rebirth plant a little bit more in there. And they got kind of like a weird dynamic with Cloud and Sephiroth going on, where I guess it would also kind of have like a little bit of sexual tension. He really reminded me of the Goblin King from the Labyrinth at times. So the story and plot are great. Like, again, it's really hard for me to go into spoilers and give theories and stuff like that. I'm going to be making another video, but at the end of the game, I was pretty speechless. I was some kind of way, like, for the last couple days. I've been like, man, geez, that was intense. Music, fantastic. That's one fucking amazing aspect. This literally feels like cinema perfection when you're playing the whole entire game, just how everything works. Everything comes together in the long run. I'm going to be interested to see where they go as far as that. Now, graphics. This is an amazingly beautiful game. I feel like they did just a little bit more polishing from what we had in Remake. The game looks fantastic, especially certain aspects of the map where you see like big mountains or scenery, and then we see these big enemies that pop up, and just the cutscenes of the characters themselves. This is amazing with what they can do. It has me excited for the third one. And I know I sound like my review's a little bit generic because I'm really trying my best not to be spoiling for you. And hopefully you guys find the time. I know a lot of you guys didn't tune into my stream because y'all wanted to experience the game for yourselves. But I hope you guys feel the same way about the game as I do, that this was literally, it felt like a cinematic masterpiece, like nothing that I've ever played before. And again, like as far as the mechanics and the gameplay and everything like that, it pretty much, if you played Remake, you're going to be able to figure this out, other than the synergy abilities being placed on top of this. As far as things go that I didn't like about the game, I didn't like small little things. I felt that there was a lot of padding added on. Like if you play the OG, you're like coasting by certain aspects of the game. I was playing OG Final Fantasy 7 Sunday night, and I was like, wow, just in Remake alone, they padded so much with the escape to Midgar thing. Like within the first hour in the OG 97 game, you can get from the beginning of Sector 5 to Wall Market within an hour. But in Remake, that's like a good 4 or 5 hours of gameplay. So, yeah, in Rebirth, they also padded a lot. And at times, it could be really good, especially when it adds to the overall lore. But then there's also padding with certain, I guess, redundant and tedious intel quests and side quests that feel just kind of like dumb. Like if you have to like rescue some chickens and send them back to a chicken coop, that's actually one. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler. Um, there was a little bit in way of like cutscenes and walking in areas where you kind of go like slow walking. I know RGT85 mentioned that. A lot of slow walking segments, especially the prologue. If you played the Rebirth demo, thank God that save file transfers over to the final game, because that Nibelheim prologue where you, Sephiroth, and Tifa go to that Mako reactor, and there's a lot of slow walking and a lot of like explanation of how the combat works and stuff. The first 2 hours or so of this game are actually really fucking slow. I'd say the first 2 hours feel like a super huge tutorial, but once you get past it, man, once you get to like chapter 3 and 4, this game really becomes a fucking banger, and there's just so much to see and so much to do, which is refreshing. And I want to see them build upon this for the third one, but open it up even bigger. Thankfully, I think they have a good chunk of the world map already completed. They got a lot of the assets as far as the characters and the enemies and the music and everything. So I don't see the third installment taking 4 years to come out. And in perfect world, I say they would have that out in about 2. Let's hope. Maybe 3 tops. I think that they have a lot of backtracking for the third installment as far as locations go from here. I think there's only like just more like maybe like a few more locations we haven't visited yet up north and certain areas in the map. But if you played the OG, I think you're going to definitely like this. I feel the reviews were absolutely justified. If there's something else I wanted to touch on that I didn't like, it's some of the mini games I really didn't care about. There's this Queen's Blood thing that's like a card game, and then there's Fort Condor, and just for whatever reason, I couldn't really get into those. Like whenever the game really forced those in on the missions, I would just kind of turn away from it. One thing that I really loved though was the sheer amount of boss fights that you go through in this game. There literally is like 2 or 3 chapters in a row where it's like almost nonstop boss fights, and it was pretty intense. In fact, one part I had to lower it to easy just to get by. There is a pretty high degree of challenge in this game for sure. And you got to, of course, strategize with your loadout, with your materia, and assess the enemy's weaknesses and stuff. This game really enforces that as far as strategy goes. Final Fantasy VII, the whole universe of it looks great in Rebirth and Remake. I mean, the whole trilogy that we're about to get is fantastic because we get to experience all these worlds, all these characters that we've seen on the PS1 coming to like a new cinematic type of view. Like there's no amount of justice that my video that I'm making right now could do this game. I could talk circles all day and just talk about how great this game is. And I felt it. Like when I was near completing the game, I felt this wave of sadness. Like, oh man, I gotta wait for the next one. That's what this game did to me. It had such a great lore behind it. Like playing this game, talking to all the NPCs, completing the quests, seeing the cutscenes, it was amazing. Combat felt great. I can't give this game justice. Like honestly, this is easily one of the best games. Not just this. I mean, it's only March, but so far in 2024, this is the best game I've played, and I would dare say this is probably one of the best games I've played in the last 5 years. That's how great it is. If I'm utterly speechless at what this game has to offer. Like every segment, every town that you go into, it has its own feeling. And all the characters that you interact with and just the mystery of what's going on and making your way towards the end game. It really feels like you're on an adventure. And not many games could capture this. And I feel Rebirth, they did it perfectly. This does the OG 97 Final Fantasy VII some serious justice. And man, I'm going to have to make the spoiler video so I can sit here and just talk about it. So I want to know what you guys have to say as far as the game goes. near perfection. This is already my game of the year candidate, and I know it's kind of like a generic sounding game review, but man, I words cannot do justice to how I feel about this game. So let me know your thoughts, guys, down below. I try to be as spoiler free as possible. Hopefully, I did it.